Audio on demand from Vision Christian Media.
You're listening to Momentum, a show that helps men succeed in life. And as we delve into this week's topic, a reminder that some of the content may be of a sensitive nature. Now, here's your host, Des Kennedy.
Hi, welcome to another Momentum show. And just before we get into today's subject, I just want to remind everybody, as I do every week, about our website, momentumaustralia.org. Give us feedback, ask questions. All our podcasts are on there. And if you feel led to support the ministry, which would be a great thing to do, please feel free to do that via the website. And also, guys, don't forget our care line. So many men doing life on their own. And, if you're struggling with life and you need, to make an urgent call, please consider phoning Lifeline and Beyond Blue. They are absolutely key. But if you want a safe and confidential conversation, please reach out to Momentum care line 1-800-000-MEN. That's 1-800-000-636, 7 days a week from 9 a.m. to 11 p.m. And also our YouTube channel. You search for Momentum_4_men. And so we've got lots of YouTube videos. Some people like to see us rather than just hear us, which is scary, really. I don't know why people would want to do that. But anyway, that's our YouTube channel. And I'm joined again with my good friend, Gerry Hudson. Gerry, welcome to the Momentum show this week.
Hey, everybody. Nice to be back again.
Yes.
Hope you're all doing very, very well.
So one of the things that we want to talk about, we talk about society and, we look at men in the world and some terrible statistics around men and loneliness. And that's the subject of the show today. The statistics from the Australian Science Journal says that in Australia, about 43% of men report feeling lonely, and 16 report high levels of loneliness. I mean, those numbers, 43% of men feeling lonely, is huge because that includes married men in relationships, but they can still feel lonely. 33% of men believe there's no one to help them when they're in need. And, just quickly talking about that, one of the things that we say in Momentum is find somebody who can be your buddy and your mate before you get into strife. Because if you don't have that friendship before you get into strife, once you hit a wall, you will have nobody to turn to. And so if you have those relationships, it's a really much, much better place to be. Just going on with the statistics, 37% of men are not satisfied with the quality of their relationships. And, that talks to their male friends. It talks to, and we'll talk about a bit more about why that is. It's, it's in terms of relationships. Middle-aged men and older men are among the loneliest of all men. And, you just look around, society, the rate of divorce, the fact that men have to do life on their own in many cases. And so 35 to 49, highest levels of loneliness stemming from disconnection, isolation, and a lack of belonging. It's very hard for, men to do life in community compared to years ago. And also, let me just mention this statistic. We lose about 8 men a day, every day, on average, to suicide. There are 3,250 suicides. That's almost 9 per day. It's absolutely crazy. It's actually double the road toll, according to the Bureau of Statistics. So, Gerry, tell me what you think about loneliness.
Well, when we were at the beginning of the show, we were talking about loneliness in men off air, and it's something that I said to you that I'm not that familiar with it personally, because I haven't felt this way, and these statistics and figures are frightening and staggering, and the amount of men who have committed suicide in a year is ludicrous. It's horrid that should happen in a first world country as well, where we allegedly have the facilities and have the fail-safes, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm looking forward to listening and learning from you tonight, Des, as well, the things that I don't know. Maybe some of you fellas there, you didn't know this either, and it might help you and help me to go, hey, maybe I can be a bit more reaching out to my neighbor or to a fellow at work.
Yes.
Say, how
Yes.
you doing?
Yeah.
You all right?
And not the superficial hello, are you okay sort of thing. It's actually
Hello, are you okay?
Yeah.
Have a nice day.
Yeah, that's
Bye,
right.
bye.
Yeah, but it's much more than that, because
It is
if you
much more
build a
than that.
relationship
Yeah.
with that person, it does two things. It helps that person feel a sense of belonging, but also it helps you feel that sense of belonging. And that's a two-way thing.
Yeah.
It was interesting. Men tend to be much more superficial in their relationships compared to women. So women, when they have a few friends, they tell their friends everything. They know what they're doing the next week. They know what they did last week. They know how they
What
felt
colour the
about
purse
that.
you've got? What's at the op shop? What's here? What's this recipe? That recipe?
Exactly. So they do talk. The whole story about women going to the hairdressers where they disclose their whole world, and that's all about the fact that women are happy to talk about their world, whereas men, they'll talk about the sport, they'll talk about the football, they'll talk about all these things, but not to a point where they feel threatened or they feel endangered.
There's a very good thing, Des, that I've learnt and am continuing to learn, and it's in a book. It's called From Freedom to Freedom, and it would be a great book or resource for men to have, because life can be very parasitical, and if you don't have somebody next to you, you are a flea and you're not free. And the idea of the book is to address identity, self-worth, loneliness, things like this. And it's helped me immensely, number one, with myself, and then number two, within the realms of my marriage, and then number three, better communication and honesty with people like Des. Like me, guys, I get to be with Des nearly every day. Okay, he lives not very far down the road. We go to the same church together. We have meals together, etc., etc., etc. So I have that buddy in place, and my wife is very thankful that I have a man in my life.
In the nicest possible way.
Yeah, and my daughter is very happy as well that I have a man in my life, that I'm not alone. So it's very important, Des.
And it flows through when men get married, for example. In a lot of cases, when men get married, they all of a sudden are directed to their wife's family and their wife's friends, as opposed to their own friends and their own family. And so that increases the isolation that they feel, which is so counterproductive.
It is very counterproductive.
And so, I mean, I guess we all need to be aware of that. Actually, Zach Seidler, he's a clinical psychologist, and he said loneliness doesn't imply that someone doesn't necessarily have any friends, but it is about the quality and depth of those friendships. And, that is true. You can know lots of people and yet be lonely. And there's a dear friend of mine, and I'm sure he'll hear this, and he probably knows who he is. And, he is such a lonely man. He knows lots and lots of people, but he doesn't have that closeness to other men, other females in his world. He's a single man, and he's an older man, but his life is lonely. And I encourage him to get out and get involved and meet with people and so forth, like in men's groups or whatever. And so that's one of the things that we need to do as men.
I agree. I certainly agree. Coffee, tea, Bonox.
Bonox?
Yeah, why not? Why not? I like healthy drinks. I don't like Bonox. But make a start, I suppose.
Yeah.
Let's not become a statistic, because if you listen, gentlemen, the show before, I believe, we talked about male bravado. And, part of loneliness can be a result of male bravado. We actually repulse people.
Yes.
We actually repulse people, and we might be lonely because of our attitude and rudeness, etc., to the people that were our friends, want to be our friends, but don't want to be around me.
Yeah.
because of that. And that's another form of loneliness. That's probably the form of loneliness that I had come to me.
Yeah.
People didn't want to be around me anymore.
Ah, right. So one of the interesting things about men and the way they talk is that men up to about the age of 13
Mm-hmm.
actually will talk non-stop about their world. They haven't learnt that fear.
Yeah, the filter, I suppose.
Yeah,
Whatever.
So they're not scared of other people. They're not scared of what other people may think, and so they will talk openly about their world.
Yeah.
But once they get to that age of 15, 16, then they change. They get that fear of, the impression of others and the fear of what other people think of their world.
Yeah.
And so we're going to take a short break, and then we're going to come back and talk about some of the ways we can fix the area of loneliness. Exactly.
The antidote.
We'll be back shortly.
You're listening to Momentum, a show that helps men succeed in life. Find out more at momentumaustralia.org.
If this program has highlighted something you'd like prayer for, we'd love to pray for you. Call 1-800-PRAY-FOR-ME. That's 1-800-772-936. It's a free call. Or text 0401 132 888.
You're listening to Momentum, a show that helps men succeed in life. Find out more at momentumaustralia.org.
Hi, you're back with Momentum. I'm glad you're joining us, and we're talking this week about loneliness. And we talked just before the break, about why men are particularly lonely, and it's got a lot to do with their environment, the fact that they don't make friends easy. It's quite superficial sometimes with men, and so the same thing applies, Gerry, in terms of men in church. There's an awful lot of men who don't go to church, and even if they do, they feel lonely in that setting. I can remember, just before you answer that, I can remember one of the first experiences I had of church in the church that I went to in Brisbane at the time, and we had a men's event, and I was on the welcome team for this event, and there were thousands of men coming into this auditorium, and they were on their phone. They were by themselves. They looked down because they didn't want to have eye contact with anybody. And they went into the auditorium. And then 2 hours later, after the event, they came out on their phone, head down, didn't want to engage with anybody. And it scared me. It frightened me. I disliked that intensely. What are your thoughts around loneliness in the church setting?
I think it's very real. I think the church has changed, and I'm not talking about traditional church. I'm not talking about organized church. I'm talking about the church that I know, where people became involved in your life and you became involved in their life, and you went out to dinner, you went round to their house, you had barbecues. We've even been on cruises with family and friends of people in church. We did what was called, we did life together.
Yeah,
we did life together. We helped one another, and I think that I'm seeing that to a degree disappear. And in church, men sit quietly, they sit lonely, they go home quiet, they go home lonely, and maybe they wait for the next Sunday before they make contact with anybody again.
Yeah.
Or maybe not.
Yeah.
But it's out there, and it's real, and it's not nice.
Yeah. No, that is exactly right. And I think your analysis is absolutely right in the sense that, men do go to church and they can sit and they can say hello to people, but the depths of that relationship that they may have is often just not there. They don't take the initiative to engage with other men, go out for coffee. And that makes such a difference. I had coffee on Tuesday with a guy I hadn't seen for maybe couple of months, probably, maybe even I haven't seen him this year. And so he and I caught up for coffee, and it was such a joyous thing because we had a cup of coffee and we talked about the deeper things for each of us.
Mm-hmm.
What was happening in his family, how he felt about that, what he felt about. He's involved in a Christian organization, and so we talked about that. We talked about the ministry that I'm involved with, Momentum.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was a really deep conversation. And I was overjoyed because
would
of it.
open
Really,
up.
yeah, it was really cool, and we need much more of that.
We do. I don't know how to go about it because it's a very, very individual thing. We read the statistics, or you read the statistics earlier, and those statistics, they're probably not completely accurate. They're probably a little bit higher, and that's very, very sad too. And how do we overcome it? Like you were talking about the church, how do we overcome it in the church? How do we engage with men in the church? How do we engage men in that way?
Yeah, no,
I know that you have a friend at church and he's moving and you've been fishing with him on a few occasions.
Yes.
And see, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
See, that's the kind of, I mean, I surf and I'd love to go surfing with other people. And I've tried to get other people to come and go surfing with me.
I'm not a surfer.
No, I know. But the people they ask the people that I do ask are surfers. And mostly it's been like no or next week or yes and not turn up or whatever. So there's reasons behind it. And it'll be interesting to try and find out what it is that's stopping a man from entering into a healthy relationship with another man.
Isn't it interesting? Even Adam, when he was in the Garden of Eden, he was lonely.
Yeah,
and he needed to have some company.
Yeah,
because we're built for community. We're built for
relationship.
That's exactly right. I mean, even God himself, has relationship.
Yeah,
and wants to have a relationship with us. Yeah. And so that's really, really cool. So, what do you think is the key to overcoming loneliness? Do you know of any key you want to fire out there?
I know the key.
Yes.
I know the key. His name's Jesus.
That's right.
It really is.
Yeah.
He can, if you, first of all, again, you've got to have a desire to want to enter into that relationship, and then follow it through. I think within the church, possibly, we have a lot of people who love God, who are believers, and stuck.
Yes. And, there's an element of it which is not being prepared to make a difference, not being prepared to actually go out there. Because the guy who's standing beside you in church may be lonely too.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so...
Or shy.
Or something. Yes, and if you take the initiative, if we as men decide that if we see a guy on his own, we're going to go to him and we're going to just have a conversation and just chat about, whatever was happening in church, the worship or the message or just talk about life and what's happening in life, that can develop into a solid friendship.
Mm.
Yeah, and the reason why, we always in Momentum encourage men to join men's group is one of them is for that very reason. It's so that men can just get to know other men. And as I said before, if you don't have men in your life, join a group, whether it be a Christian group or a secular group. There's lots of secular groups.
I wonder if the men listening know of a Christian man who's their friend, or if you are a Christian man and you've had enough, go and find another Christian friend, all right? Someone that is a little bit weird, and I mean weird in a good way. Someone that and just say, hey, look, this is where I am. I'm stuck, and I'm just asking you, can you help me? There's that humility again versus the bravado we talked about last week. Start to lay yourself down so you can actually get across to somebody, help me. Because I did that with you a year or so ago. I did that with you, and it worked because you care about me. And so, fellas, I would certainly suggest that you find somebody, or if you know somebody who's a Christian, an active Christian, a loving, caring Christian man, go to that person and just say, hey, look, things aren't really good. Can I buy you a coffee and can we talk about it? Or something like that. Something really, really simple.
Yeah.
and begin the journey.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And, we have access, I guess, in Momentum to lots of men's groups. We don't have men's groups in every town or every community. But, on behalf of Momentum, we're happy to try and find one for you.
Yeah.
And so if you're, struggling to find a group in your community, just seek out the churches, by the way, on their website. And on their website, you'll know if they've got a men's group or not. And if they do, just take a step and reach out to them. And just make a phone call, send an email. And I'm pretty sure 99% will come back and say, hey, this is when we're meeting. We're going to have a barbecue. It'll cost you $10 for a sausage sandwich or whatever it is. And you can do fellowship, meet people.
One of the hard things that I learned over some years is very hard. It's not impossible, but it's very hard for a man or a woman to walk into a room where they know nobody. And see, that's a great exposure of self. And that can be very, very intimidating. So perhaps with that phone call to that church, if you're talking to the pastor or the assistant or the youth leader, whatever, explain that to them and say, look, Can you meet me outside, or can we meet for a coffee first? Can you walk in with me, so I'm not walking in alone?
Yes. That is so true. That's really, really cool. I went to a men's group in Beenleigh in Brisbane last week, and it was called Shed Happens.
Shed Happens.
And so it was an amazing group. And again, that loneliness of walking in, I felt because I didn't know anybody there. But within minutes, the guy who organized the group saw there was somebody new and came over and started to chat.
Fantastic.
And that's exactly what, and I would encourage, just as we finish off, guys, if you're running a men's group, have people on point.
Be aware.
Have people on point that are looking out for somebody who comes along for the first time. Put your arm around them, welcome them, sit with them, eat with them. And
exchange your number or whatever.
Exactly
whatever.
right.
Is it okay if I have your number? Is it okay if I call you during the week? Is that all right?
Yeah. No. So that's a really, really good thing. And just in closing off, we just need to acknowledge that feeling lonely is actually very common. It's not a unique thing. Find at least one trusted man you can have your coffee with or whatever, and open up about how you're feeling. I know men tend not to do that, but guys, once you open up and you share your world, it's easy because that person knows you, warts and all.
And you get lightened.
Yeah. A problem shares, a problem halved.
Yeah.
Isn't that old saying?
That's what it says.
Yeah. And so find like-minded men, right?
Yeah.
That's key, right? Don't go and, find a man in the pub in the nicest possible way, right? Find a man who's got similar values, maybe struggling the same way you are, but do life together with that person and commit to working with that person. Yeah, don't expect them always to come to you.
Because they're the one that's looking for the help.
That's right. That's exactly right. So that's really cool. And also, get out and do things you enjoy. If you've got hobbies, do those hobbies with other men. Don't do it on your own. And just
enjoy it while you're doing it. Enjoy it while you're doing it. Maybe not with bravado.
That's right. Okay. And so finally, seek quality time with your family and kids and friends.
Talk to your wife. That's paramount.
If you have a wife,
if you have a wife,
If you don't, maybe you need to find one.
Maybe talk to your father.
Talk to your father, or your heavenly father.
Talk to your dad.
Yeah.
Can I finish with the scripture there?
Of course you can.
This is Jesus, and he says, "Come unto me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest for your souls." Yeah. Jesus is calling out to all of us men that if we're in strife or if we're lonely, there he is. He's just waiting. He's a gentleman. He won't rush in, push in, etc. He's asking you, if you've got issues, come to me. I want to help you. That's really what I want to do. What a great way to finish off. Guys, don't forget our website, momentumaustralia.org. Don't forget our care line, 1-800-000-MEN, 1-800-000-636. And we will see you, or you will listen to us next week. Bye.
You've been listening to Momentum, a show that helps men succeed in life. For more information or to hear this week's show again, go to momentumaustralia.org. You can also access a whole range of resources to help you on your journey and to get in touch with the team at momentumaustralia.org.